I'm Vic Myers. Welcome to The Resistance. Yesterday, I talked about the importance of not letting fear be a driver in how we participate in our democracy. Thought it might be a good idea to follow that up with a current, concrete example of how politicians use fear to drive policy. Now, I just learned that the Colorado Republican Party has collected enough signatures to put a new law before the voters. This law would mandate 8 to 32 years for anybody convicted of possessing or selling fentanyl. And before I go on, I want to be clear that I'm not dismissing the seriousness of fentanyl when it comes to the people who are impacted by illegal use of this drug. When I first read the story about this ballot initiative rather, I adjusted my point of view. I looked at it from a cost-benefit perspective. How much is this going to cost the taxpayers? And is the fentanyl problem big enough to justify whatever that cost is? Let's start with the cost. According to the people behind this measure, they expect about 548 people to receive fentanyl convictions in 2025. If this measure was the current law, then some of these 548 will get an 8-year sentence. Some of them will get a 32-year sentence. And the rest, it's going to be somewhere in between. Now, the per-day cost of incarceration, according to a staff budget briefing of the Colorado General Assembly, is $156.09 a day, or $56,972 a year per incarcerated person. If all 548 get an 8-year sentence, it's $250 million a year for every year this law is in effect. If they all get a 32-year sentence, it's $1 billion a year for every year this law is in effect. These are all in 2025 dollars. Factor in inflation and you can imagine how it's going to climb. Now, that was just the cost of incarceration. What about the other costs? The money that funds this law, it has to come from somewhere. Will it come from public education, an institution that's under constant attack and constantly underfunded? Will it come from roads? Our highways are already rougher than hell around here. And then there's the societal cost. In Colorado, Black people make up 4 to 5% of the population, but 17 to 18% of our prison population. Hispanics make up 22% of the population and 32% of the prison population. Because Black and Hispanic Coloradans are already incarcerated at disproportionately high rates, any law that significantly expands felony sentencing will, by definition, disproportionately impact those communities unless enforcement patterns change. That's some of the cost. So let's put the problem itself in perspective. 2023 is the last year the government's given for the number of fentanyl deaths in Colorado. Number is 1,089. Population in Colorado in 23 is about 5.9 million. That means that 0.018%, or 1 out of 5,148 residents, died from fentanyl in 23. It's lower than the national rate of 0.022%, or 1 out of 4,545 for the nation. It's not even close to a leading cause of death in Colorado. So what does all this have to do with fear and policy? Right now, Trump is using our fear of fentanyl to justify his policy of blowing up boats in the Caribbean. They're not fentanyl runners because fentanyl doesn't come out of Venezuela, but fentanyl fear is the driver. Here in Colorado, the Republicans are using fentanyl fear to push a policy that will disproportionately increase incarceration among Black and Hispanic Coloradans and further erode public education. 2 policy goals of today's Republican Party. When you recognize the tool being used, you can identify what's really being worked on. From Colorado to the Caribbean, fear is the tool, but they're not working on fentanyl. They're working on building an authoritarian state. Thanks for listening. Good day.